Hey there, this is PeteBuchwald, and today I want to talk about the top 10 things I love about Logic Pro. I've worked with Logic Pro for a number of years, and there's a lot of things I've really come to appreciate. And I think it's only fair to follow up this video with something like the top 10 things I do not like about Logic Pro, because there's some things still that drive me crazy with this software as opposed to working with other recording or composition audio software. So let's get going here. I should note that it's with some of these points in the top 10, I may refer you to another video of mine for the sake of time. I've been doing 2-minute Logic tutorials that go into a little detail about some of these things I love about Logic Pro, and I won't go through that information again, but I may just refer you to the video. Alright, let's get going. The number one thing I like about Logic Pro, at least the number one on my list here, is convolution reverb. The Space Designer Reverb is a convolution reverb, meaning this simulates actual physical spaces, or it's a physical sample of a space using impulse responses. You can even create your own impulse responses. I have a video on that. Or you can just go on the internet and find impulse responses that give the sonic characteristics of real concert halls in the world, or real vintage audio gear, vintage reverb units, and other type of devices that can be emulated here. You go and find those and you just drag and drop that wave file into this interface right here, and you have access to that impulse response. Then when you go to save your project, just make sure to check that box at the bottom that says copy Space Designer Impulse to project folder. Alright, so that's the first one. Second one is this software is surround sound enabled right out of the box. So I can get a new track and I can say I want the format of this track to be surround sound. Alright, there we go. So this track has a surround sound pan knob. I can take the sound wherever I want. So as long as you have the hardware that would support those 5 outputs, then you have your surround sound. Okay, or I guess it's 6 outputs with including the low frequency, the sub. Okay, number 3, automatic auxiliary channels. Here's what I mean by that. If I go to my mix view, these green channels on the right, these are all different types of drums and percussion. So I can drag my mouse here and select all of those. Let's give them all the same output of a bus. And watch over on the right here, a new auxiliary channel is just going to magically appear. There it is. All these channels just went to this. It knew what I wanted. It knew I wanted to make a kind of one fader to control them all. So this is my percussion. Alright, my next thing I like is the solo on this. Let me hide. You can hide the audio tracks and instrument tracks and just get down to the submaster faders here. The solo button on this auxiliary channel is going to work. Meaning in other softwares, in other titles of audio software, if you were to do the same type of routing and hit solo on this auxiliary channel, it wouldn't work. But in Logic it is going to work. So if I hit play, I can solo my percussion or solo my guitars, and it works how I would hope it would work. So I like that in this software. Okay, my next one, bounce in place. If I go to a MIDI region in Logic, let me zoom in a little bit here. If I control click on this region, I get an option to bounce in place. So if I select that, it quickly creates a real audio file of that region. There it is. Love that. Bounce in place with a control click. Alright, number 6. The right mouse button I have here is assignable. And the way you do that, I made a video of that, of how to make your right mouse button assignable to a tool. Right now mine is assignable to a scissors, so I can make a cut. I'll check out my video if you want to see how to get that third tool and be able to assign your right mouse button to be whatever you want. Fade tool's kind of a cool one too, so just right click, drag, you got a fade. Alright, the next thing I love is keyboard shortcuts in Logic are customizable, and again I made a video on how to customize your own shortcuts. If I hit my plus button, I'm creating markers at the top here, and I customize the numbers above my alphabet on my keyboard here to go to those markers with number 1, number 2, etc. And you can set them up however you want. And same thing with MIDI. If you have a MIDI controller with knobs and faders, you can customize what those knobs and faders do in Logic. Okay, number 8. I like having access to this notepad, that if I want to write song lyrics or make notes for mixing or production, I have a nice notepad right in the software. But please remember that if you have song lyrics here, I found out the hard way the other day that if you accidentally select all and start typing, you cannot Command Z and undo that delete. Those lyrics are gone. So be careful and just use it accordingly. Make sure to save often, or to use this as a backup of your lyrics. Save often, right? Okay, let's close this up. Next thing I like, number 9, quick notation composition. I've used Logic to compose string parts very quickly. So if this was my string quartet here, I would compose all those parts, get a general idea. For the notation version, I would quantize them so the notation comes out right. Then hit your Command 3, and here's my score. And you can just go and print up the score. You can select an individual part in Command 3 and pull up that individual part. I've found that I can create quick scores for studio musicians to come in. Alright, and the final thing I like about Logic Pro, and this is the number 1 reason I go to Logic Pro, is I find it to be a fantastic creative environment. Built into Logic, right out of the box, you have a ton of virtual instruments, a sampler that has amazing sounds. Like, just look at this one. I don't know if you can see this up close, but here's sounds of world music. So African sounds of kalimba, African, Caribbean, European with bagpipe and accordion, all kinds of different sounds from all around the world to get you going with film scoring or writing original music. And the same thing with that creative environment, you have access to tons of loops. I think it's like 50 gigabytes worth of samples, you know, drum grooves and all kinds of different instrumental grooves that will sync with your song tempo. You can even make it follow chord progressions. That's a little more tricky, but it is doable. So I hope you've appreciated this top 10 list, and if you're a Logic user and there's other things you appreciate about it, then I'd appreciate it if you would comment and let me know what you really enjoy about Logic Pro, and I'll try to get that video about the top 10 things I don't like about Logic. I'll try to get that done very soon here. Alright guys, that's all I got for this time, and we'll see you next time.